Good afternoon and welcome to this month's show. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with IT modernization strategies in the federal government. With me on today's show are Gundeep Ahluwalia, Chief Information Officer, Department of Labor; Maria Roat, Chief Information Officer, SBA; Chris Collura, Senior Director, Ruckus Networks Federal; Karl Mathias, Chief Information Officer and Assistant Director, U.S. Marshal Service; Sanjay Sardar, Vice President of Modernization at SAIC; Surafeal Asgedom, Chief Officer, Modernization, Department of Veterans Affairs; and Henry Sowell, Chief Information Officer, Cloudera. Well, we're talking about IT modernization, but I want to say IT transformation, because this is really about transforming, right? We're transforming the experience to the citizen, to the small business owner, to the veterans, to the U.S. Marshals folks, name your mission. And we're also transforming the way we're doing that, right? Modernizing in a modern way. So as we look at going on that journey, Gundeep, let me start with you and just tell us about sort of what's going on over at the Department of Labor. We're hearing a lot of stuff, we're reading a lot of stuff, a lot of activity happening at the Department of Labor as far as transformation.
So thank you for the opportunity, first of all. So I usually like to start with talking a little bit about what the Department of Labor does for the American citizens. I think we sort of get to hear about the jobs numbers and people equate us to that. So we actually protect 401ks and everybody's retirement plans. We provide transition assistance to all the veterans coming in coordination with Veteran Affairs. We run Job Corps centers. We are the beginning of every temporary work visa that is issued by DHS. We do the labor certification and prevailing wage analysis. We are in the apprenticeships to promote apprenticeships across the nation as well. So there is a whole host of activities other than the statistical activities that we do from a BLS perspective. So that diversity of program areas sort of is challenging from a IT perspective to meet the needs across the department. What we've done over the last 3 years is tackled transformation in two big chunks. One is around the commodities of IT. It's almost like you cannot talk about eating healthy on an empty stomach. So if you don't have your basics like your laptop, your Wi-Fi, or all of those things across the 350 locations that we have, then you just cannot talk about the transformation piece.
Stakes, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think we've made significant progress on that. We've found things like leasing and other things to sort of find the resources to transform that area. And we've reached most of our offices across the nation. Now, over the last year and a half or so, we have pivoted and we are focused on providing the mission applications, transforming that, getting out of the legacy that we have that builds in any federal agency that is as old as ours. And we are focused on providing reforming these citizen services. One big example I'll give you is, I talked about temp visa and how we are the beginning of issuing a labor certification. Mm-hmm. That used to be issued on a currency paper. And all that currency paper used to be stapled by employers and sent to DHS for applying for a visa, right? So I'm pleased to report that very soon we will be getting out of that business and you will get your labor certification in an electronic just like a boarding pass you get when you get onto a flight. And we will send these labor certification directly to DHS.
Outstanding, really modernizing, pushing up the value chain. Maria, I know that you faced a lot of technical debt when you got over there at the SBA, and you've done a masterful job of that journey. Tell us about what's happening over at SBA. What are you guys up to?
Just a lot going on. You know, when you look over the last 3 years, you know, we support 30 million small businesses and entrepreneurs across the United States. Access to capital, training,
they're the engine of this country.
All of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we are very citizen-focused, very citizen-facing on everything we're doing. But with that technical deficit, you know, I've been there almost 3 years now. And we really focused in on that foundation for the year one, tackling our entire stack, our network, our infrastructure, upgrading, all of those things, and then moving into, you know, those enterprise programs, setting the foundation for those. So we're building a house, right? So we set the foundation, we're putting the walls up, and now we're continuing to build on that over the course of 3 years. So we've tackled not only the network, the infrastructure, all the commodity stuff Gundeep talked about, but focused on employee productivity in the beginning, stabilizing the infrastructure, the network, and now we've laid the foundation for enterprise programs. That's the data layer, putting in place the network so that we can support, you know, Skype for Business, doing video across the network. We've now moved into SD-WAN, putting out our first pilots on that, you know, really driving that modernization across the board. So, you know, we've gone from the foundational stuff that IT does to starting to build the foundation on those enterprise programs. And now in year 3, we are executing on those enterprise programs, whether it's the employee productivity, whether it's that data layer across the board, standardizing all of our tools, our products, our cloud solutions. So we've really taken some very big major steps over the last 3 years, and I'm looking forward to the next year.
Yeah, really sort of add all the pliers and wires and sort of the basics up the value chain, and really enabling the folks at SBA to deliver on the promise to the citizens,
I mean,
right?
when you look at SBA.gov, our public facing, you know, revamping everything from the website to moving to, we're getting ready to launch on login.gov and starting to consolidate.
That's fantastic. Chris, you look at it from a different perspective. You see a lot of these activities going on across the community. Tell us what's going on over at Ruckus, and give us an update as to, you know, what's going on programmatically as far as the modernization journey.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. You know, the first thing, CommScope recently purchased ARRIS and Ruckus, and it's you know, an $11 billion company, 30,000 employees that offers a new set of technologies through one company. So if you look at the combination of public and private LTE, the transition to Wi-Fi 6, and then secure, monitored, structured cabling, we really think we have a kind of a unique offering that we can provide the government, but not only the government, the service providers. So if you look at where agencies are going and some of the issues they face, we see several of them moving to as-a-service models on the network, really allowing service providers to do what they've done in the commercial space and moving that into the government. It's, I think over my career, when I first started, government led with the new technologies. I think we've kind of reached a standpoint now, which I think is good for the government, where a lot of the things that they want to do is being done in the commercial space.
Which is okay, but I'll tell you that plumbing, I'll call it, those pipes are really important for a modern experience. You've got to have that type of technology readily available wherever, whenever, down to the mobile device, et cetera. It's super important. Karl, how about at U.S. Marshals? I know you all have been on a journey. I suspect that some of the things that we heard is some of the things that you all are doing over there at the Marshal Service. Tell us about what's happening there from an infrastructure, from a modernization, the whole transformation.
So I think it's important to go ahead and talk about what the Marshals does.
That's a good
as
idea.
Part of this, because if you've watched The Fugitive, that movie, you have a mindset of what we do.
Well, that's one piece, right?
And that's what I'd like to point out is it's actually a lot more complex than that. So chasing fugitives is obviously something we do. But what we spend a lot of our time doing, and a vast majority of our budget, is on handling prisoners. So right now there are 61,000, as the last report I have, fairly unwilling customers of ours that we are keeping. And we do about 850,000 productions to court every year, and that's where we bring a prisoner to court. Do about 200,000, varies year to year, prisoner movements across the nation. We also take care of judicial security. So if you go to a district courthouse, a federal courthouse, those are going to be our contract guards there. Those are going to be our deputies there. We guard the judges. There's about 2,500 to 3,000 federal judges we take care of, make sure that they're kept safe in case there's a threat. And then the other activities, but I think my favorite's the asset forfeiture division. Because it makes staff meeting fun to go to hear what's going on with them. We recently sold a luxury yacht, auctioned it off for $65 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and what I want to point out is that those funds go back to victim compensation funds. So it's not what you may hear. But the other thing we've auctioned off are things like Bitcoins. And we had to figure out how to do that. So what I point out is it's a very varied mission, and we have a lot of IT systems that have to support that. So I think if I were going to talk about one of the big modernization efforts, it would be the modernization of our case management system. So that case management system has three primary areas we're working on: judicial security management, the prisoner operations, and then the investigations, which is the fugitive tracking. That project was started a couple of years ago. We have delivered the judicial security portion of it. It's saved us 50,000 hours so far, 50,000 labor hours.
Wow.
Alone for just that component of the system. Prisoner operations has been deployed to Maine and Delaware as pilots. We're now going to roll that across the rest of the nation. And then they've started the development portion. This is all using agile methods on the investigations. So over the next couple of years, that'll be rolling out. And this is fundamentally going to change how the marshals work, because now instead of having 1 million lines of Java that the old system ran on, we're the oldest federal law enforcement agency, formed in 1789. I like to joke that our JADIS, our current system, came on in 1790. And I think some of my employees were there to see it. But that system is a thick client, have to use it on a computer. The new system is going to be mobile. It's made to be flexible. We can change it as needed. We can talk more about that later.
Sure.
But it's going to fundamentally change how we do
Well, it's
business.
interesting because what you're hearing here is, you're transforming the business, right? And you're modernizing in this modern way. It's awesome to hear that. Sanjay, how about at SAIC? I know you have a perspective where you've been in federal service. You're now seeing things from across the community. What's it looking out there as everyone's on this transformation journey?
No, and you said it well, Luke, in the sense of it is a transformation journey, and it's pretty personal to every agency. I think we are a 25,000 person company, but we're privileged enough to serve both on the federal civilian side, on the DoD side, and national security. So we're seeing a lot across the different ways. But like I said, I think every agency is seeing it as a personal journey. It's not easy enough to say, hey, what I did one agency is the same as another. I agree with Maria and Gundeep, what they said. It started out in the last couple of years, everyone was getting into that point of getting those foundational technologies correct and making sure that they're right, they're ready to receive modernization. Along with that was a literacy aspect of a lot of the employees that we have in the federal government understanding what modernization meant. Because when we first started out, there was a fear of, hey, my job's going to get replaced, or I'm not going to be able to do the things that I want to do the same way. And people have started to understand that this technology modernization is really going to help them, as you said, change the business. So that cultural acceptance, that we're starting to see a lot more of. So people are now ready to say, we talk about AI, right? What are the business cases for AI? A couple of years ago, there weren't a whole lot. I mean, the technology is good, the technology is there, but people really didn't understand how to apply it. I think after these couple of years, we're now starting to see across the board, people are coming forward with business cases of what to do, how to change it, and really that's the benefit of modernization, is how do you change the business to be better serve the customers and constituents.
And all of a sudden do all these things that you couldn't even dream of doing before, right? And I think we've all seen, where just a small microdose of different types of skill sets into an environment can blossom into this whole transformation journey. Most IT employees understand sort of the basic concepts. They just haven't been exposed to some of these new modern techniques, and once they start to see some of that, it just lights up like spades. Surafeal, there's a lot of activity going on at VA, a whole bunch of modernization happening there. Boy, talk about a transformation journey. Tell us what's happening at the VA these days.
Well, thank you, Luke.
Yeah.
It's great to be here with you and the panel. I would say it's an exciting time to be at the VA. I think VA is undergoing the largest IT transformation in its history. To paraphrase VA Secretary Wilkie, VA is not in the cusp of transformation, it's in the middle of it. And to kind of give a sense of what's going on, it's a massive IT transformation that's touching every aspect of the VA. To give some context, similar to what Gundeep did, VA provides benefits, healthcare, and memorial services to millions and millions of veterans. And there's no greater mission than what we're doing at the VA. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's not just one, it's multiple initiatives that VA is going to interplay with this transformation. And also just to kind of say, the movement that we've done is we've changed from taking a buy-first approach. What I mean by that is VA has had a history of building its own tools. We've realized that the commercial world has done a better job. Our mission is to provide service and care to our veterans. So what we're going to do is do that buy-first approach, take advantage of that much.
Sure.
The forefront of these are three major systems that we're going to replace legacy: electronic health records, our financial management system, as well as our medical and logistics supply chain. Just to take the electronic health record system, VA is the largest integrated healthcare system in the country. So just think about that in terms of what we're trying to transform. This new solution will give instant access to doctors to follow our veteran, whether their care is provided at DOD, whether their care is provided at the VA, or at the private sector. And then this is just one of our initiatives. So really what we want to do is we want to make sure that these initiatives are working together. So my office ensures that there's integration and interoperability with these and other large-scale efforts. So just like everybody else here, we're all busy in terms of making sure that we're successful in terms of IT modernization.
Big activity, big role. Henry, how about at Cloudera? Tell us, first of all, what is that? What does that company do? And then tell us a perspective, because I know you have, again, a unique perspective where you're seeing this across the community. Tell us about what's happening in the transformation journey, modernization journey.
Sure, there's several different areas of the transformation journey, and one of the areas that we're highly focused in is priority for moving to cloud and shared services across many different agencies. And what that's looked like over the last few years as those priorities have shifted out, it's been a pendulum, right? Get everything into the cloud, everything on premise, and we've been watching those initiatives and helping to get more progress in that space. And one of the things that we're doing is increasing the effectiveness on the move to cloud and shared services, where recognizing the strategic needs for hybrid and multi-cloud strategy and deployments, right? That not everything is meant to be in a cloud. I think that's one of the things that you're starting to see a reaction in the government space is reaction to cost and how we're deploying the flexibility that they have and needing to be able to do multi-cloud and continue to do on-premise from a cost perspective. And then the data layer that several of you spoke on is that how do you maintain governance, security, and enterprise readiness across those different environments? So at Cloudera, that's one of the things that we're focused on is providing an enterprise data cloud service and providing that in those different spaces.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. And there's a delicate balance, right? Everything has to be done for the right reasons at the right time under the right circumstances. And just because you're moving something into another environment, i.e. a cloud, certainly doesn't mean you're obfuscating your responsibility there in regards to oversight and security and everything else. So we'll talk more about that when we come back, but we're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. With me on today's show are Gundeep, Ahluwalia, Department of Labor, Maria Roat with the SBA, Chris Collura with Ruckus Networks Federal, Karl Mathias with U.S. Marshals, Sanjay Sardar with SAIC, Surafeal with Asgedom, Surafeal with Asgedom, Department of Veterans Affairs, and Henry Sowell with Cloudera. We're talking about IT modernization and IT transformation, and we want to talk about a specific program now. Maria, can you give us a specific program that you all have been working on at the SBA?
You know, we've been on this, I call it a digital transformation, not necessarily IT modernization, because we've been really touching every aspect of SBA. I have this vision of a 360 view of our customer. We have lots of stovepipes across SBA, and having that 360 view, that end-to-end life cycle of our customers from every point they touch across SBA has been that star out there. You know, this is where we're driving to. And when you look at all the moving pieces and parts we've had, I look at it like a puzzle, right? There's a lot going on. So we've got a lot of projects that are happening. I want to talk about two very specific that are near and dear to many people's heart in the federal government. One of them is as I've been driving digital transformation, modernization, really thinking about being innovative in what we're doing and taking some very big steps. The TIC pilot that we did in partnership with DHS about a year and a half ago that informed the TIC policy that recently came out. That was one example of how we're really trying to drive innovation. The other one, again in partnership with DHS, is our CDM pilot. When we moved to the cloud, because I refused to buy any more hardware, and I don't think my folks really thought about what it meant when I said no new hardware in our data centers. They didn't know what that meant. I did. But
Sounds pretty straightforward.
Right. But when you think about it, no new hardware, you go, okay, no new hardware, and we're closing it down. But what that meant is we're moving to the cloud.
Sure.
You know, if it doesn't need to stay on-prem, it's moving, right? I said, get us to 4 racks in our primary data center. And that was kind of scary to people. But we moved very fast to the cloud, and we've got, you know, a multi-cloud environment. But how do we monitor and manage that environment? How do we maintain that? And we have turned up many of the tools that are cloud-based to monitor all of our on-prem and our multi-cloud environment. So in partnership with DHS, we have really re-looked at what CDM means, continuous diagnostic and mitigation, what it really means, that it's not tool-driven, it's about capabilities and about being able to see and, you know, who, what, where, what's going on in your network, all those aspects. And that we've taken all of that data, and not only are we using cloud-based tools for multi-cloud environments, getting all the feeds in and all of our on-prem, we can monitor and manage all the way down to our mobile devices. So I can manage all the way down to that, and I have visibility on my entire network today. So in partnership with DHS, that CDM pilot, we're trying to rethink that it's not just about the tools, it's about the data and what you do with that. And not only have we taken that data, we've redone the dashboard, and we put Power BI right on top of that. So the phase 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, the different phases of CDM, we've overlaid dashboards on top of the data that we're doing with cloud-based tools, and we've really rethought what CDM could be. And that's part of, you know, our transformation, and one of the projects where really driving innovation and pushing the team to think outside the box in terms of what's possible.
Right,
Let's
I think
try it.
it's great to see OMB really partnering with various specific agencies and allowing you guys to get out front, work through some of these things, knock the kinks out so it can be deployed and adopted across the interagency. Sanjay, how about at SAIC? Can you give us a specific example, maybe in one of these various agencies that you all are working with that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, no, we can talk about two. I'm going to take Maria's lead and talk about two here. You know, we do get to see a lot of agencies and how they're moving on different areas. One, I'll highlight the GSA's COE programs that we're working with at USDA. That's been a huge success for what GSA was trying to do, what USDA was trying to do, in the sense of moving them from an organization that made decisions, I don't want to say on a gut feel, but without a lot of data, to where they're using data very effectively to make decisions. Secretary Perdue has really pushed down on USDA that every decision has to be a database decision. So when we modernized that, it was understanding all of the aspects of where the data was and where we are creating dashboards, creating data analytics tools, so they can do that. So rural areas can, you know, drill down into their data and see what underserved populations there are, from whether it's a hospital nearby or where the agriculture is working, where jobs need to be created. They can see all of that and make real good decisions. USDA has done a phenomenal job of actually getting that out, getting that ready, and moving that forward. That laid the foundation for them to be able to say, hey, let's start modernizing or digital transformation in other areas. That's definitely one. The other one is GSA itself. On GSA themselves, they do, like everybody else, there's a lot of customer service that they're working on, both inside GSA and out to the customer. They've modernized their whole ITSM, their technology management systems, to say, look, we're going to look at how we do customer service across the board. Where are we looking at everything? They're a ServiceNow provider, so we work with them quite a bit. But overlaying performance analytics, how long does it take to service a customer? What are the real factors that are affecting that service? Those kind of technology improvements have really started benefiting how they deliver service out.
Right.
Those are two great things.
And two huge agencies really on the move. Surafeal, over at VA, you talked about two or three, I guess, areas that you're working on. Highlighted one. Maybe you can talk about one of the other ones that you're working on from a programmatic perspective.
So I think for VA modernization, success means being able to deliver services to veterans wherever they are digitally.
Right.
And really, if you think about it, we put veterans at the center of everything that we do. And furthermore, the veteran population is changing. They're getting younger. So we want to be able to keep pace with this veteran population. And we also want to be able to provide services and care the way they want to receive it. So two examples of these are really how do we provide a digital feature. The first one that we did really is looked at the way they interact with us. We developed a new streamlined website called va.gov. The experience, the feedback that we got was they had a fragmented, fractured experience with us. Right. They weren't able to get their services information that they want to receive it. Mm-hmm. The feedback that they gave us is they want to have the same experience that they do in the private sector, similar to online banking. So we revamped this website to make sure that it's seamless, experience similar to a single front door. Along the same line as this, in terms of even the apps, VA has dozens of apps out there. So what we did is launch last month, or this current month, VA Launchpad. What this does is it puts everything into one place, a single sign-on, a veteran is able to access their care the way that they want to do it. Similar to this, the second example I want to provide in terms of this digital feature is telehealth. Telehealth, when you think of telehealth, VA is an industry leader in telehealth. Just last year, we provided over 1 million telehealth consultations.
Wow.
And if you think
That's
about
impressive.
About 4.7 million veterans of ours are in rural areas.
Sure.
Half of these telehealth visits were provided in rural area. So this kind of gives you a context of in terms of how we're industry leaders, how we're going to be able to shape this. And we're also kind of developing these partnerships to be able to make sure that we deliver these services that they want to get it, and also to make sure that they get the access and care and services that they need to be able to get. So that digital feature has really been our focus in really enabling our employees, our physicians to deliver those services and really focused on the veteran. How do they get the care that they want, the service that they need, the way they want to be able to receive it?
Amazing. I mean, it's really digital transformation at scale. It's impressive. Chris, how about at Ruckus? Can you give us an example of a program out there that you'd like to highlight, something that the listening audience would certainly be curious about?
Sure, and like the others, I'm going to break this into two categories. So I think you have the standard upgrade modernization path that a lot of agencies have done over time on networks. And we've had great success with the Navy, which has probably the second largest network in the world, only to the internet, when you look at NMCI. So we were able to provide networking equipment that was reduced logistical costs and aided in the deployment of that massive network upgrade. So that definitely one of our highlights of a major upgrade for a huge scaled network.
Sure.
The other thing that we see is I think a lot of agencies struggle with vendor lock-in. I've always kind of laughed, that a lot of times procurement agencies think that getting 3 quotes for the same vendor is competition, right? It's really not. So one of the things.
Wait a minute. Call the press.
But if you look at what the DoD, the Intel community have done, they've set out standards. They have APLs, approved product lists, a well-documented process for getting products certified, and they have multi-vendor networks. And at the largest scale, they work. Not always so much on the civilian side.
Right.
What we see as kind of the thing that we help with transformation is going to be as a service networking. So what this does is allow the agencies to put up an SLA that they need, and then let the service provider worry about the functionality. Also gives them the ability then to change their requirements without them having to bear the full, capital cost of changing that network. So we've seen, I'll highlight the VA. So talk about servicing the veteran, probably not more important time to service them when they're in the hospital. So
Sure.
we've seen it as a service offerings start to come out for guest access, right? So, when they're in the waiting room, they can get access to internet, which is, like you said, that generation's getting younger. They expect that. It's not, a nice to have anymore. So it's just one of the ways we see agencies breaking down that vendor lock-in and moving towards a service model that allows them to use, their funds and their time better.
Different expectation from all the citizens, I would imagine. Gundeep, how about at labor? Can you give us some examples there of some activity, maybe one program you want to highlight?
Sure. First of all, I'm still trying to get Tommy Lee Jones out of my head. When I see Karl, I can only see that now. I think at labor, the program that I would like to highlight is the using the DOL IT platform to get out of the legacy debt and also implement new programs into it. So what we've built is, we all have tools, right? We have every tool under the sun. But what we've not been able to do is use them effectively on a turnkey basis to churn out programs when they're needed. So a rendition of that platform is the apprenticeship.gov that we came out with. It is a presidential priority, and we were able to knit this together. It was supposed to be one-stop shop for all things apprenticeship, for employers, for apprenticeship seekers, etc. So we
blue button of labor.
So we used the platform to follow a model where we are a knitting of network, just like hotels.com, rather than create something that is very that gets outdated very quickly. And we utilized all the modern technologies to make that happen. The same platform was used to be the foreign labor application gateway. We call it the flag for employers to apply for labor certification so that they can get temporary workers into the country. The same platform was utilized to create a CXO dashboard so that we can pivot as an agency to make decisions and make all of the data available to the right person at the right time when the decisions have to be made. The same platform was also built to transform our Office of Federal Compliance Programs. So they've gone completely electronic across the nation as well, utilizing the same platform. Congress always likes to throw wrenches. So in our foreign labor certification program, they decided that the Mariana Islands would also have the capability to hire temp workers and seasonal workers. And the platform was there. So the legislation came out and we were able to turn it around and provide that capability from an IT perspective within months of that law being enacted.
Sounds incredible. One modern platform where you can just stack all these business applications on top of it. It's incredible. Of course, the whole town's going to want to know more about that platform. Karl, how about at U.S. Marshals? You were talking about one program that you all were working on. Maybe you could highlight another. I know you guys are doing some really cool stuff over there.
Sure. So if, what I would say is being a component CIO is the funnest job you'll ever have.
I agree with
especially when
that.
you're operational. So let me focus on operations and what we do with operations. So when people are out in the field, we want them out there. We don't want our deputies sitting in the office. And so I'm going to say this, modernizing your IT is the easy thing to do. Modernizing the culture that uses that IT is the difficult thing to do. And that's what we focused on at the Marshals, is to develop the trust of our operational partners. The deputies are going to go into the field to say, what do you need? Don't think we can't do some really magical stuff. And we have. It used to be that if they want to run warrants, information, criminal histories on a fugitive, that they would need to go back to a computer, or they would need to ask a state or local officer for assistance with that, who would call a dispatcher. It was a time-consuming process, and meanwhile, you've got somebody potentially dangerous shackled up in front of you, and that's not a good situation to be in. So what we did was said, let's work together with the operational community to develop a portable way to do that. Let's make sure we're emphasizing mobility in what we do. And so we developed an iPhone application that also runs Android, with partnering with Palantir on this. and the FBI assisted. I cannot express thanks enough to the FBI. Now they can go in, type in a name, scan a driver's license, scan an automobile plate, a boat plate, and get the information back in seconds, including criminal history, anything like that. We used that successfully in the beginning, and then they said, well, can we also look up fingerprints? Because this may shock everybody at the table, but our unwilling customers often lie about who they are. And so we were able to get a small fingerprint reader that ties to the phone, and so now we can scan their fingerprints on the spot and within seconds know exactly who we're dealing with. And this cuts down what the deputies call the name game that's played with this. If you've watched TV shows, you know what happens out there. This cuts that down to nothing. So the net effect is now the deputies are more effective at catching people who have warrants, dangerous people who have warrants who need to be brought in, whether it's state, local, or federal. At the same time, this has built a dependency on this technology that means now making sure that that phone works is a top priority. So not only modernize the mobility of the phone, we've also gone back and modernized our ITSM. So we moved off our on-premise solution into ServiceNow, software as a service solution in the cloud, to make sure that, and also teamed up with ATF to combine help desk, fully managed help desk, and now our response times are so fast that the majority of the calls are for password resets, because the automated password reset is slower than calling our help desk and having them reset it. And so they can do everything right from the phone.
Really modernizing that whole experience, and I'm sure hardening that phone, reliability, security on that phone for remote NCIC checks, that's incredible. Henry, how about a Cloudera? Can you give us an example, specific program that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. Another priority is on the cybersecurity front, modernization on that 100%. Side of it. And one of the challenges that we've seen some agencies dropping as much as 90% of their network data for analysis because of storage and other restrictions. We've seen some agencies only keeping 3 months of their data because on the legacy cyber platforms, that is what they could afford to keep. And what we've introduced is a Cloudera cybersecurity platform is a way to have a scalable cybersecurity platform that allows you to use modern techniques such as machine learning and access to IoT. So from the edge to AI, that you're able to gain insight into your data. And we've recently deployed this at scale at a government agency and seen really great effects. And the level of data that they're able to keep now, that where incidents are occurring on average 7 months out from being recognized, reducing that time frame, but also allowing the investigators to see back through history their data sets and be able to do modern investigations.
Fantastic, some real deep analytics there. Sounds impressive. All right, well, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. With me on today's show are Gundeep, Ahluwalia with the Department of Labor, Maria Roat with the SBA, Chris Collura with Ruckus Network Federal, Karl Mathias with U.S. Marshals, Sanjay Sardar with SAIC, Surafeal Asgedom with Department of Veterans Affairs, and Henry Sowell with Cloudera. We're going to start talking about lessons learned. Let me start with you, Karl. And I like to ask this question on a positive or a negative, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other, it can be both. Lessons learned as you're going on this transformation modernization journey.
So I'd say three things. First, back to modernizing the culture is probably the difficult thing to do. You need to encourage your operators that you're working with, your operational people, or if you're building an administrative application, those people, to think outside the box. I know that's an overused phrase. I use it in two ways. Number one, I get my own staff out of the office, get them out of that box. And I've actually sent them out in the field. I have great pictures of my CTO in body armor holding a ram for a door. But they learned a lot going out and seeing how it happens. The second thing is when you're actually developing the modernized solution, the IT, You need product owners sitting in there with you, and they can't just recreate the same old processes using new IT. You need to be thinking how you're going to do work differently to make the most effective use of that. And I would encourage, think differently to see how you would like to operate and bring the IT in to support that. So that's number one. Second is, and related to that first one, is being agile. I can't overemphasize this enough. The people you're doing this for have to own the product and move, take care of that and work with you. The third thing is don't own any hardware, move to the cloud. So I'm with Maria on that. I've said the same thing, no more hardware buys.
There you go. We're going to jump right over to Maria and ask her lessons learned. Just give us one so that we can get around the horn before we have to go to our closing. Top lesson learned. Top
lessons learned. I think on top of what Karl said, take risk. Not just the federal employees or as the CIO being able to accept risk. I'm not saying be in an orange jumpsuit, that kind of risk, but
well, that's
accept
okay.
risk.
Karl will take care of you if you get it.
Right.
Trust me.
Thanks, Karl.
He's going to find you.
But take risk, take measured risk, accept risk. Don't be afraid to do things and really kick the tires on stuff. And that's just not for the federal staff, but for my contractors as well. I need them all to work together as a team. We're all there for the SBA mission, those entrepreneurs and small businesses out there. But I think accepting risk is one of the lessons learned that I think it's very hard for people to do. And that as the CIO, I'm accepting risk, so I expect my folks to accept that, as well as knowing that I am not going to shoot the messenger if something breaks. If a mistake is made, pick yourself up, brush yourself off. I'm not going to shoot you. Fix it. Let's move on.
Take some risks, but make sure they're measured. Surafeal, how about a VA? Top lesson learned.
I think we've been very deliberate in identifying lessons learned across the government industry. We've identified three, I'll make it very quick, three pillars across lessons learned. Transform systems, improve operations, and make sure we empower people. In terms of transforming systems, we're making sure we get commercial off the cost products. In terms of simplifying operations, we know this is technology implementation, but we got to make sure that we change the way we operate our workflow, and then empowering people. This is a cultural change. We got to make sure folks understand that change management is key in terms of implementation.
Unleash that brain power. Gundeep, top lesson learned at labor as you go on your journey.
So culture eats strategy for lunch.
I've heard that before.
I have that written on my wall.
Yeah, you do? So I think culturally shifting not only the internal workforce to think differently and celebrate not only success, but failures. I think it's extremely important to do that.
It's all learning experience.
It's all in learning experience. I would say speed of change in the government is also extremely important, along with persistence. So persistence and speed is extremely important. Otherwise, enterprise projects sort of collapse because people don't feel the change quick enough.
Right. Got to see it.
Yep.
Sanjay, top lesson learned.
So along with what everybody said so far, I think when you look at this from a transformation perspective, focus on the outcome, focus on what's going on. Don't just transform technology for the sake of transforming technology. I love the idea of going to no hardware anywhere, but focus on why we're doing that. What is the final outcome of how we're serving our constituents, our citizens, and where we are? It's important to do this transformation. Obviously, we're getting off that gravel road, getting onto a superhighway. But if we're driving on that superhighway with a horse and cart, it's not gonna work. So we need to transform our business to then transform and meet the outcomes that we're looking for.
You got it. All right. So we're gonna paint a picture of the future. Henry, maybe you can weave in your lesson learned there on this question. But tell us, what's it look like when we look out over a couple of years? What's it going to look like from Cloudera's perspective?
Yeah. So again, I think this is tied back a lot to what the panel said on culture. We've seen some government agencies leave as 99% of their data in siloed pieces where they don't have access to it. So changing the frame of reference to that mission data is critical to everything that's trying to accomplish. So we're going to see transformation to better access to that, all the way to IoT devices where we're doing fingerprinting on those devices. How do we gain access to it? How do we apply machine learning at the edge? How do we get that out to the ones that are driving our missions forward? I think we're going to continue to see modernization on that front, and I think that does come with those that are creating applications and designing the IT infrastructure is having that as a point of focus. is that the data is going to be key.
Data is going to be key. Surafeal, if I'm a vet and I'm coming into being a veteran out of the service, what's that experience going to look like at the VA in 3 years?
I mean, we want to make sure, I'm going to piggyback on what Henry said, data is going to be key. And when I say data, I'm looking at 2 ways. One is artificial intelligence. We've hired a new director of artificial intelligence. We want to be able to unleash the huge amounts of data that we have within VA and do research with it. The other one's applied program interface, APIs. We want to make sure that we get partnerships with our industry to make sure that we make it easy and seamless. We also have a lot of disruptive and emerging technology coming through. 3D printing is an example. We want to also make sure that robotics, in terms of helping our employees, comes through. Telehealth, the ability for folks to get care what they want to get. So we want to make sure that we have a digital future, and we want to make sure that experience is as seamless, as simple, and as easy for our veterans as much as possible.
Top-notch care anywhere, anytime. Sounds awesome. Sanjay, how about at SAIC? What's the future look like when you look over the horizon? What are you guys cooking up over there in the petri dish at SAIC?
I don't disagree with anything that's been said so far. I mean, data is one of the key things that everybody has to look at, because that is going to drive, it's that fuel of the economy now. I will say from our perspective, we're starting to see more, like I said, the business outcomes of what use cases. So I'll give you one real quickly. We have a shortage of pilots in this country, from the Air Force, from everywhere else. Usually pilots are trained by using these massive simulators, I mean millions and millions of dollars of simulators. When you look at the advent of data with the VR technologies that are here, the RPA, AI, we've been able to create things like a virtual reality pilot training that we've built for $8,000 that we've been able to scale across the board. When you add all these technologies together to get that creative solution, then you're going to get into the point of, okay, now we're actually really using that technology to build things. So our vision of the future is combine those technologies, integrate well, look at things across the board, and figure out where you can actually solve real challenges. So.
And really kind of maximize that technology as you stitch it together.
Yes.
All right, Karl, so if I'm a judge or I'm a deputy marshal out there in the field trying to catch these bad guys or protect these judges, what's that going to look like? What kind of tools, capability am I going to have in 3 years?
Well, I think what I do is elevate the discussion on that to say that the modernization efforts we're taking on are going to make us a lot more agile in our response to congressional requirements, executive branch requirements, and then the real world things that happen out there that we need to respond to as an agency and maybe shift our focus. So with our modernization efforts, we're going to be able to do that very quickly versus our old legacy systems where it's difficult. And then additionally, what I would expect to see is the ability to scale up and down during surge periods, saving costs during those down periods, and then also saving costs by teaming up and sharing services. That's already happening. Whether we're going with DOJ to Office 365 and the shared instance of that, or U.S. Attorney's Office and using their VoIP implementation. So I think we'll see a lot of savings through that.
I would imagine that, in that modern environment, as you're pointing out there, you talked about sort of time to delivery is going to really greatly improve, right? You're really setting the stage up, sort of like Gundeep, which I'm sure we'll talk about more, to where that, when there is a new emerging requirement, you can quickly build a capability and put it in the operator's hands.
That's correct, because we're using business process engineering tool sets. So we can build new processes very quickly, modify the ones we have, and at the same time, we're completely agile in how we do work now.
Right.
But we're moving toward Sec DevOps to make that even more, reduce that lead time even more. So yeah, we're expecting good things.
That's fantastic. Immediately put that capability in the operator's hands. Chris, how about at Ruckus? What do you guys see out there as you kind of look over the horizon? What's the demand signal looking like?
So the interesting thing, I heard this mentioned, culture. So addressing the user experience in a mobile world is key, right? Everybody wants to move to data accessible on their tablet, their phone, no matter where they are. If you look at the industry, right, we've come out with 5G, LTE, public, and now with CBRS, we're having private LTE networks. You have Wi-Fi 6 coming out. IoT, huge challenges and huge opportunities with IoT. in all specters, civilian, DoD, and the commercial market. So tying those things together in an easy, manageable way is key. One of the things we look at is agency scale, or what I like to call carrier scale. So the number of devices, number of things you're going to have to manage are huge, right? Most enterprise solutions don't look at a scale that can scale up to a carrier level or an agency level.
Right.
With Ruckus, ARRIS, and now CommScope, we have that scale. Solution providers pick our solutions for that ease of management, ease of operation, which makes it possible then to scale to a government level.
And stitch those capabilities together and really make it carrier class. And as we talked about, just having that capability reliable at that level is going to be really important, right? People are going to expect that. They expect it now. Maria, how about, if you're a small business owner in 3 years, what's that experience going to look like?
Over the next 3 to 5 years, I want single sign-on for all of our customers coming to SB for our services, whether it's counseling, capital access, certifications, any of those services. I want to have that single sign-on that includes identity proofing so that they only have to do that once, and they can get to labor and they can get to other agencies as well, so incorporating that. But for our staff to have a 360 view of that customer I talked about, driving automation, I see a lot of opportunity for RPA and ML across SBA as we start, for our personnel to be able to focus on those customers, you need to automate some of the intake and some of the things that are going on.
100%.
I want to see that RPA. And what that's going to drive to with that 360 view of the customer, I talked about that data layer, but also bringing in some of the predictive. So if I look out over the next few years, bringing in that predictive model and knowing that this is a model of our customer. They came in for capital access and they've got a business plan and they're doing these things. So now we have a model of our customer. How can I predict what's the next thing that they may do, and being able to apply AI to some of that? So I see that over the next few years.
Yeah, and that's that's a great citizen experience, right? As far as even just the log-on capability, it's me when I'm logging on. Now you're predicting what I need next. I think that's
Say,
fantastic.
how can I help you instead of sitting back and waiting?
Right.
Here's
and fill
what you
out this
could
form,
use.
fill out that form, fax
Right.
this in, et cetera. Yeah, the good old days, right? Gundeep, how about at labor? If you look out into the future, it sounds like you've really set the table there for some fantastic things to continue to happen over there. What's that going to look like? What's that experience going to be in 3 to 5 years?
First of all, I want to do all the things that the panelists want to do.
Of course,
put
yes.
together.
Uh-huh.
So I have this vision that our platform has blossomed and we have paid down our legacy debt in the next 3 years, right? Which means the customer experience for people who are actually consuming the Department of Labor services, whether we are protecting workers, whether we are protecting your 401ks, or we are providing training, all of those things are seamless and it is transformed digitally. We already have in the platform, we've integrated with login.gov. I do not think a employer who is reporting injuries to OSHA or applying for temp workers through FLAG or reporting to our Office of Federal Contract Compliance should need 3, 4, 5 different accounts to be able to do business with the Department of Labor.
Sure.
Mobile cannot be an afterthought, right? We look at Thanksgiving shopping sprees. 70 to 80% of the traffic is coming through that. We host and run the benefits.gov program for 17 different federal agencies. And we see most of the traffic coming through mobile devices, right? So it has to be, for example, we came out with apprenticeship.gov and all of these flag, they are mobile enabled from day one. So you cannot overemphasize the future generations are just not going to have laptops and do business on desktops. So that is going to be a big focus. Internally, I think the focus has to be moving people from low value work to high value work, right? We have all these office consolidation projects. I don't want to do any wiring into the future. We have 5G. I'm going to run a pilot this year to see how 5G and Wi-Fi can replace the RJ45 cables that I'm running through our old buildings, right?
100%.
And use RPA. I don't have the resources to pay down all the debt, but I don't want to hire talented people and convert them into data entry clerks. So I want to use RPA and all of that. So internally, I feel like we hire all this workforce and then convert them into a legacy way of doing business, and that has to stop.
And they say, you know, I heard somebody the other day say on RPA, it's like, you know, I just want to take the robot out of the human so they can do higher value work, right? And with that, I just want to thank all of you for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us for the program. I'd like to thank the sponsors for without we don't have a show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Radio that make this program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.